Hey there, it's Olivia Savannah here from Olivia's Catastrophe, and today I'm here to do a book unhaul for you. We are going to be cleaning out my shelves that are overfilled, and we are going to get rid of some books and make way for some new ones. As usual, we're going to be doing this in sections, so we're going to start with my DNFs, then we're going to go to fake DNFs, books I've read but I just don't feel like I need to keep, and then books I haven't even tried but I'm still going to be unhauling, and I'll explain my reasons why for all of them. Let's get down to the books. I will always be starting with my most brutal section, which is for my DNF books, and the very first one I have here is Love in Colour by Bolu, Babalola. Now, I've just heard such good things about this author, and so I thought I would start here with these short stories that I've heard so much about, but they just didn't work for me. They are focused on mythology and love stories in mythology, and it just wasn't a vibe. I wasn't intrigued, I wasn't interested in these stories. I just read them and I was feeling like, okay, I've read a short story. And so I actually think that I'm going to enjoy this author's romance fiction a lot more with her full-length novels, so I decided to stop reading the short stories and to take a better shot, a better chance with her books in her longer work. Then I was reading Night Walks by Charles Dickens because I really like his fiction, and this is actually a non-fiction from him. It's essays of things that he wrote and saw while he was walking around the UK because he has insomnia, and as a fellow insomniac I thought I would be able to enjoy this, but it was so boring that it actually cured me of my insomnia and put me to sleep every night because I did not care what this man saw while he was walking around. I think his fiction is really engaging and he has interesting stories to tell and interesting opinions on things like class, but when it comes to his non-fiction and just saying stuff that he saw while walking at night, I just could not care less. So unfortunately, Night Walks was not one for me, and even though it's really short, I just gave myself back the time, I DNF'd it and I moved on, so I'm not going to keep it. I went on a holiday to the Caribbean and I thought I'd take some Caribbean literature with me while I was there. That did not end out working for me because I started reading The God of Good Looks by Breanne McIvor, and this is set in Trinidad and Tobago. It's about this girl who's a model and she wants to actually get into journalism, but she's being reduced to her looks and her beauty standards. And I started this book and I could not, for the life of me, I could not get into it. I really did not like the writing of it. The actual writing style was not working for me, and above and all else, I also just did not like our main character. She immediately cheats with somebody. She's the other woman to this man. She knows that this man has a wife, she knows that this man has a family, and I just was not engaging with her. Cheating is something I don't particularly like reading about in books if you're new here, and so I didn't enjoy that factor. I didn't enjoy the writing, and I was like, why am I here? What am I enjoying? So I didn't actually even get that far in. I scraped myself way through those first 40 pages, then I thought I cannot scrape my way through a full-length book. It's time for me to DNF, even though I brought this all the way to the other side of the world with me. Similarly, I brought How to Love a Jamaican by Alexia with me, which is a short story collection about Jamaican people and the Jamaican diaspora and their everyday lives. And I typically like a short story on holiday, and to be fair, I read half of these and I didn't actually dislike them strongly. I just felt very okay about them. I was reading them and I was feeling fine, but I was reading them and feeling fine and not really wanting to reach to pick up my book while I was on holiday, while I was on the beach, which is a bit of a strange phenomenon for me. So I thought I just need to change what I'm reading. I need to read something else that I'm going to enjoy more and put these down. And once I put it down, I never picked it back up again on that holiday. And so when I came back home, I decided it's just time to DNF it and clear some weight and clear some time on my TBR. So this one is also going. And then last but not least, for my DNFs, I DNF'd Dead Girl Walking by Sami, Ellis. There's just something about an American young adult fiction book that sometimes just doesn't work with me. It just doesn't vibe, and that is fine. And this one as well was giving the same kind of chaos and lack of plot construction that I got while reading the vengeful this book that I read a while ago and I really hated. And this was giving me the same kind of plot layout where things weren't quite adding up or weren't quite making sense, and I just wasn't feeling for our main character in the ways that I'm supposed to, and so it was all falling apart for me. And I thought, before it falls apart too much, before I strongly dislike this book, let me just DNF it here and now. So I did that, and of course I'm not going to be keeping my copy. So those were actually all of my DNFs, and if you noticed in the intro I said I've got 2 fake DNFs and I'm going to talk about them here. So I'm someone who loves to get secondhand books, and do you know what secondhand shops are abundant in? They're abundant in classic bind-ups. So in one secondhand shop I got the collected works of Edgar Allan Poe. It's got these beautiful pink sprayed edges that you can tell are faded over time, and I was excited to read Edgar Allan Poe. Now then, for Christmas I was given Edgar Allan Poe and Other Short Stories in the Penguin Classics Library Edition that I collect, and I'm currently reading those. And what I've discovered from reading those is that Edgar Allan Poe is racist, and you can tell from his stories. And so of course I'm gonna read that one because I do collect the Penguin Classics Library Editions. I'm 100 pages out of 300. I'm just gonna finish it and continue, but I am not by no means going to read any more of his short stories after that Penguin Library edition. And I've actually already read all of his poetry and I found it very mediocre at best. I read all of his poetry and then I unhauled it. I was like, whatever, fine, I don't care, he could sharpen it up. But having read some of his short stories and being quite underwhelmed by them, to be honest, including some of the famous ones, and realizing he's a raging racist, I decided I don't need to have his collected works on my shelf, and I'm not going to put myself through them. So this is kind of a DNF, but also kind of just like, I was never going to read a collected works, was I? And when I was taking that off of my shelf and realizing I'm never going to read a collected works, am I decided it's time for me to let go of this also secondhand collected edition, the complete works of Oscar Wilde. It's got like, it had green sprayed edits, it's really old, and to be fair, I did actually read The Picture of Dorian Gray from this one, so it's not been unused. I read all of his fairy tales now as well, but I'm just realistically going to not read most of his books in this giant bind-up edition. I'm probably going to seek out individual volumes of his plays that I want to read next. So it's gonna clear from my shelf. It's gonna give me so much space back. And then we are moving on to what is rightly the largest section of this unhaul, because I think this should always be the largest section, and they're books that I've read but I've just decided I'm not going to keep for whatever reason. I've reviewed all of these on my channel, or they will be reviewed because I'm a bit behind on my recent reads, so I'm just going to try and give you abbreviated thoughts of why I've decided not to keep it. So we have Days at the Morisaki Bookshop by Satoshi Yagisawa. Now this is like a translated Japanese like bookshop fiction that's supposed to be really heartwarming. I read it and I felt fine about it. I really liked the beginning, and then the second part didn't really work for me all that much. So overall I felt okay about it, and thinking about it, I don't really need this on my shelf. I've recently read the second one and I still need to wrap up my thoughts on that, but I have a feeling I'm not going to be keeping that either. So I think these ones are just read, done and go. Then we have Watermoon by Samantha, Sotto, Yambao. This one didn't really work for me. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. I think when people describe it as a Studio Ghibli film in book form, that's very, very accurate, but I much prefer them in film form, because in book form I felt like they were too whimsical, solutions were just pulled out of nowhere, the romance is very insta-lovey, and the pacing of this book is breakneck speed. And so I just read it. I read it very quickly because the pacing is so fast, but I didn't really fall into it and love it the way that some people have, and so I believe this proof is better off served as someone who might be able to love it more than I did. I'm also unhauling Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson. I enjoyed reading this one. This is kind of a horror book where it's sapphic. She meets this girl in a marketplace, and as she gets to know this girl, she realizes that maybe something more sinister is going on with her, and the ending packed a punch. I just think it took a little bit too long to get to that punch, and then I just wanted that punch to keep on hitting me for longer than it did. That is a very weird way of describing that I wanted the ending to last longer, but I did, and I had a good time with this. I've read Delilah S. Dawson before. I'm going to read Delilah S. Dawson some more because I do enjoy her books, but just this one I just read it and I had a good time and I don't need to keep it. I have very limited shelf space, so I really have to be picky with the ones I choose, and if I do not wholeheartedly love it, then it has to go. That's the case for this one. Then we have The Isle of the Gods by Amie Kaufman. This is a pirate book that I actually enjoyed, a fantasy pirate book, young adult, that I actually enjoyed. I think it's got great points of views. I think the plot is really strong. I think the characters are very likable and easy to get along with. Even though there's so many of them, I never got confused. I've got nothing but praise for this book. I just realistically am not going to continue the series. I start a lot of series. I'm a standalone reader. I don't finish them all, and this one is one that I knew I definitely would not be finishing. So while I had a good time reading this, and I was perfectly happy to read a long book, you know me, I'm not scared of DNFing if I'm not having a good time. I just know I'm not going to continue the series, and therefore I don't need to hold on to book one. So we have Death on Gokumon Island by Seishi Yokomizo. So I read this one and I thought it was a good time, but not a long time. Enjoyed seeing the mystery unravel. I liked it. I have since read book 1 in the series and I absolutely hated it, so I read book 2 before book 1. If I'd read book 1 first, I doubt I would have read this one at all. But I've decided I'm not going to continue this murder mystery series where you follow a detective solving different crimes. It's a Japanese classic series and I wish I'd known that before I started, because while these were more recently translated and therefore leading me to believe it's a more modern novel than it is, knowing it was a classic would have helped, because it's got quite a lot of sexism woven into it and I just didn't really vibe with that. So I'm unhauling this one. I read Comfort Me with Apples by Catherynne and Valente, and I thought this was a retelling of something. Don't want to tell you the something because that spoils it, but I thought it was a retelling of something, and it actually turned out to be a retelling of a different story of something else, and I was like, oh, that's really cool to now know this in hindsight. I enjoyed this, I thought it was good, but I didn't love it wholeheartedly. I read it and I really had wanted to read it for a long time because I've got some friends who really enjoyed this book. But for me, it was just an okay read. And so it's one that I'm reading and passing on. We have Miss Ice Sandwich by Mieko Kawakami. I read this in January. I thought it was fine. It's a very short book as well, very quick, and it's about this young boy and he has a fascination with this person who sells sandwiches who has had some face work done, and people are very mean about the fact that she's had face work done. I don't think this is a bad book per se, it just wasn't really for me because it's written in stream of consciousness writing style and I struggle with that. And so while I could get what the story was doing, it just didn't quite get me on board. And so I'm passing it on. The Poisons We Drink by Bethany Baptiste, and I felt mixed about it. There were some things about this fantasy book that I liked, there were some things, a lot of things actually, that I didn't quite like or didn't quite get along with. All that is to say, I don't think I'm going to read book 2 in this series if book 2 is coming, and so because I know I'm not going to continue the series, I'm not just going to keep hold of book 1. So I read it, it was a decent time, not a long time for me in my shelves. And then we come to Fair Rosaline by Natasha Solomon. So I read this and I actually enjoyed it. It's historical fiction retelling of Romeo and Juliet told from the perspective of Rosaline, and it throws in a little bit more of a savvy storyline to what's really going on with the men in Verona. Now I enjoyed this because I am a softie for Shakespeare. It's really hard for me to dislike things that are about Shakespeare or Shakespearean plays. I just feel a kinship to them. It feels familiar when I'm reading these retellings. I really love seeing how they incorporate bits of the play, and I liked kind of what the storyline was doing here. Do I think it's revolutionary? No. Do I think Rosaline would have been in all those situations and places? No. Was that character my least favourite thing about this? Yes, actually. But I still read it, I still liked it, I still had a good enough time. I just don't need to remember that time. I don't need to keep this proof on my shelf. So I'm passing this one along as well. Then we get to a book that I read and I really didn't like, and that was Calypso by Oliver K. Langmead. This is a sci-fi novel in verse. If you hear the words sci-fi and novel in verse and you put them together, I will appear. I will appear and I will read that book. So as soon as I saw that mashup, I decided I was going to read this one. However, I struggled with this one a lot. I think the sci-fi in this was really wishy-washy. There was not enough science in the sci-fi for me to be satisfied or happy. I also think it's a sci-fi story that I've seen many times before, and it didn't really do anything revolutionary with that concept. The concept of humans going to another planet to colonize it. You need to do something a bit unique for me to be on board, because I've read enough sci-fi now to be bored by the ones that do it in a very plain, straightforward, predictable way. And I didn't really vibe with the poetry in it. I love a novel in verse that does tell the story in a poetic way and with some beautiful language, and it's not simply just taking the story and putting it in a poetry layout, which is what I feel like this one did quite a bit. So yeah, not a big fan of this. And that leads me into the next section, which is books I haven't read, but I'm not even going to try reading them, I'm just unhauling them. And we're going to start with City of All Seasons by Oliver K. Langmead and Aaliyah Whitley. I just really didn't like what I read of Oliver K. Langmead before, and so I don't want to read this one. It was also sent to me unsolicited. I was given a proof, that was a different story, but this final copy was sent to me unsolicited, so I'm not going to read it and I'm passing it along. Then we have The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is because my sister, who gave me this copy, bought herself a nicer copy, and then she gave me this copy, but now she's bought herself an even nicer copy. She really likes this book, so she's given me the middle way copy that she had before, and so now I've got a double of this. And the SF Masterworks editions, they do what they do, but they don't always do the covers well, so passing this one along. We have Among Flowers by Jamaica Kincaid. I've recently read Annie John by Jamaica Kincaid, and that's kind of changed my perspective on her books. Before, I wanted to read my way through her works, but I've decided now I don't want to do that. I'm going to be a bit more selective on which Jamaica Kincaid books I'm reading, and Among Flowers has a naturey touch to it. Me and nature writing don't get along that well. It's non-fiction. I'm more interested in her fiction now, unless it's to do with themes of imperialism and colonization, which she does very well. So this one is just one of the Jamaica Kincaids I've decided I'm not that interested in reading anymore. And then we also have here Wild Beauty by Anne-Marie McLemore. Now this is something that I do where I decide I want to read something by the author, and the first time a book by that author that's free comes across my path, I say yes, I'll take it. And that's where I got Wild Beauty, from a friend's Unhaul. But now a friend unhauled Blanca y Roja, which I hauled in, and that's the one I actually wanted to read by this author first. So now I'm just going to unhaul this one because I've actually got the book that I want to read by the author. But I need to be a bit more aware of that and stop just taking a book because I want to read an author but it's not actually the one I've decided I want to start with. So this unhaul now is making me feel more prepared for how I'm hauling books in the future. I've learned something here. And then the last books I have to unhaul are all picture books. Now it doesn't say anything about whether the picture book is good or bad that I'm unhauling it. Basically, I like to read picture books as an adult. I like to review them, and I do keep some of them, not all of them, some of them, a select few. And the important thing is that I have a nephew, and my nephew is really cute, and my nephew actually really loves reading. I'm so happy. He's a massive reader. Just look at him getting into a stack of books here. And so anytime I have picture books that I'm just like, I would like him to read it, or I think he would like it, I pass them on to him. So that's where most of my picture books go. I give him good picture books, of course. So the picture books that I'm giving him are The Warrior Tiger. He's also getting The Tree Next Door. He's getting The Best You, which I think has a really nice message to it and a really diverse range of characters. I Am Strong Just Being Me. I really love that one. Can't wait for him to read it. We've got Wiggling Words, which has got very good dyslexia rep in it and is also by a dyslexic author. We've got I Am Going to Make a Friend, which has good messages of sharing in it, and then Changing Tides, which has a depiction of a mixed race and a like unique family combination. So he's got a whole load of picture books there for him to try as well. And there we have it. That's my unhaul books that are leaving my flat and going to different places. Please let me know in the comment section down below, do you agree with me on these books? Do you disagree on any of them? Or what was the last book you have passed along to somewhere or someone else? And especially also, this includes if you've lent a book out. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button if you want to see more, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be updated every time I have a new video. And you know what they say, onwards and upwards. Excelsior!